Today on the Three Gorillas podcast, the Gorillas review and discuss what is possibly the first documented serial killer in the United States, for sure in Texas. We're talking the Midnight Assassin. You have found the Three Gorillas podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Three Gorillas podcast. Our episode is on the Servant Girl Annihilator, or Austin Axe Murder, Austin Axe Man, Midnight Assassin, all kinds of other monikers. Joe, Mark, good to see you.
You too, Greg.
You too, Greg. Good to see you, my brother.
Hello, Joe.
So,
hey, Mark.
So this is one of those cases that I ran across years ago. I ended up reading a book called The Midnight Assassin by Skip Hollandsworth. My idea was I was going to write a book about this particular case. When I read The Midnight Assassin by Skip Hollandsworth, who is one of the writers for Texas Monthly, I was like, I'm not going to write a book. He did such a great job. This is a page turner from beginning to end, The Midnight Assassin. And so I kind of went on the other side of it. I'm like, I'm going to see what is real and what's not. And I'm also going to write an actual incident report for each one of these murders. Now, the Midnight Assassin supposedly killed 8 people in Austin from 1884 to 1886, which would make him, previous to H.H. Holmes. So people say, well, H.H. Holmes was the first serial killer in the United States. No. If anybody was, the Midnight Assassin right here in Austin, Texas, also known as the Servant Girl Annihilator, would have taken over that spot. But actually, there's many other serial killers in the United States that we've just never assigned the fact that they're a serial killer. There's a whole bunch of them.
Plenty.
Yeah, there's actually a very young boy that was a serial killer up in Boston that killed a bunch of other kids. Yeah, man, that's a crazy one. Nobody wants to talk about. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this. You guys have lived in Austin. You've worked in Austin. You've worked these areas. And just a quick brief of what the Servant Girl murderer happened right at the end of 1884. There was a very, very bad storm here in Austin. You can imagine 1884 Austin. It was a cow town, but it was also they talked about it being the Athens of the West, or the Athens of the South, because we had a university that was just starting up here. We had just were getting electricity downtown. The Driscoll Hotel was just coming up. We had an ice cream shop that actually had air conditioning. 1884.
Wow.
This ice cream shop. Yeah.
Wow.
They ran air across the ice back there where they were making the ice cream and cooled off the whole shop. So Austin was a really interesting city at that time. The law enforcement was very much in flux. You had the city marshals, or the city police, kind of transition at that point. You had Sheriff Hornsby that was here, Malcolm Hornsby at the time. And all of a sudden, this one night, this very horrible incident happens with Molly Smith. And it happened just west of Shoal Creek on 6th Street, which is, where Bowie and 6th is, right at that corner. And it would actually be the grocery store right there. I'm not going to name the grocery store, but the back side of the grocery store is where the house was.
And that was the first one, right?
Yeah. Molly Smith. And in her situation, she was, she wasn't from Austin. but she was there with her boyfriend. They were sleeping in an outbuilding, like a little cabin, on the people that employed them's property. And a guy named Tom Chalmers was the man that was in the main house, and he was staying there because his sister and his brother-in-law had gone to Galveston to do some stuff. And he was staying at the house, and all of a sudden, this man comes inside the house. Now, imagine, I want to say Tom Chalmers was an old Texas Ranger, pretty hard, right? And Walter Spencer was Molly's boyfriend, and Walter just walks up to the house very early in the morning and just opens up the door. Now, the thing I got to clarify with everybody is Walter Spencer is a black man and Molly Smith is a black woman. And for a black man to just walk into a white man's house at 4:00 in the morning was a very dangerous occupation to have at that time. But Tom Chalmers hears the noise, comes down, sees Walter. They have a conversation. It wasn't a pleasant conversation. Walter had been hit over the head with something that split his skull wide open. It scalped him pretty good, and he's bleeding all over the place. And basically, Tom Chalmers just said, Walter, you need to get out of my house and go get your head wrapped up. And that's all he did. He just ran him out of the house. Well, Walter had been walking around up and down what is now 6th Street, would have been Pecan Street then. But he was walking back and forth looking for Molly because all he knows is he woke up on the floor with his head smashed in, bleeding everywhere, and she was gone. So he got up and he's out hollering for her, walking up and down the street.
So, Greg, was he their guest? Was he their guest at the house?
Yeah. Yeah. They were living together.
So what was the issue? Him walking into the house?
So it's okay. I'm sorry. It's a separate house. So the main house, the employer then had a couple of outbuildings. They had a privy, an outhouse, and then a servant's quarters. And Molly and Walter were staying in the servant's quarters.
Oh, okay.
Molly was a servant for the family, and Walter actually worked at Butler Brick, and he worked at a couple of other businesses in town that as basically a day laborer. And he worked over at Butler Brick, which Butler Brick is still in operation out in Elgin. But that's where most of the bricks downtown came from, was Butler Brick. And he was staying with her that night. So Tom Chalmers would have known who Walter was, but they would not have been any kind of friends or associates or anything like that. Walter was really, really lucky not to get shot walking in that house in the middle of the night. What ends up happening with this particular case is Walter goes back out and he's looking around and he can't find anybody. Dr. Steiner lived in that area. And he heard some people hollering, and he was walking down there. He was going to go to the little grocery store that was real close to there. And as he's walking over there, then another person finds Molly's body. Dr. Steiner and Walter end up over there. And then, of course, everybody's yelling. And there's other people that are coming. Well, Steiner actually goes over to the store. Ravy's grocery store is what it was called. And he actually makes a phone call. There was a actual phone there. This is 1884. So he's got to pick up the little bell, flick it a couple of times, the operator to come on.
That's high speed.
Yeah.
High speed 911, baby.
Yeah. And he says, give me the police. Give me the city marshals. So she transfers him over there. And he tells whoever answers over there at the city marshal's office what's going on, and they send one officer over there to handle this. He says, yeah, I have a woman, you need to send an officer out here. Well, obviously I'm sure the girl that was the operator was listening to this conversation. And probably the first part of losing a little bit of operational security is, from the woman that was the operator, and starts telling other people. And of course, people are hollering in the area, and a lot of people end up showing up. But the way that they describe the crime scene is as horrific as you can imagine. This particular individual that was committing this series of crimes, ending up being, the first serial killer, technically, probably in Texas. His modus operandi would be, it's close and right around a full moon, always.
Oh, man.
That's another kind of interesting facet about
Yeah,
this.
especially
But
with that.
you have to think about Austin in 1884.
Yeah.
There was no lights at all. You had no electricity in any of the homes. There was a little bit of electricity downtown on 6th Street, Driscoll Hotel, that wasn't actually even open at this point, I don't believe. So it's very, very dark. In order for you to, move around at night, it's nice to have a full moon. So most of these murders happen on a full moon night. And what he would do in this particular case, go up to a house that he knew, there was a female in there. We find out a little bit later, he takes off his boots, and then he's very quiet, and he ends up getting the only weapon that's around there, which everybody had a fireplace, because that's how you stayed warm in 1884 in Austin. So everybody had a wood pile, and in that wood pile is a what?
Fireplace poker.
Fireplace poker and an axe, right? Every wood pile is going to have an axe out there, and he would just pick up the axe from the scene and then be very quiet, come into your house, and take a good swing right into your head. And yeah, so that's what ended up happening. He hit Walter enough to where it almost killed him, probably caused a skull fracture. But I don't know if that was his motivation for Walter. For sure it was for Molly.
So you said that her body wasn't there. So he kills them and then he moves the bodies?
Yeah. So in every one of his cases, he kills the body inside, and then he drags the body out into the yard under the full moonlight, and then has his way with them, which is ravages the body, as they would put it in the newspaper at that time, violated the body, and then would put his boots back on and leave.
Post-mortem, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Or as the body's dying?
Yep. So
Wow.
that is his modus operandi. One of the things that was really interesting to me was the fact that the law enforcement at that time kept one thing fairly under wraps. And I'm not sure whether it was by design or not. I think it was, because just about every one of the bodies that we're talking about here, of the 8, 6 of them had also another wound to the head. So they would always have an axe wound, sometimes 2.
Okay.
And then they would have a penetrating wound in the side of the head. This penetrating wound would be about the size of a pea or a little bit bigger, depending on how the skull broke, but it would be on one side of the head or the other. Now, they tried to figure this out, and they were wondering what was going on with all this, but Sheriff Malcolm Hornsby, who didn't have anything to do with these cases, he was assisting in these cases because this was city issue. This was Austin Police Department, Austin Marshal's office. He did some really good forensic work, and one of them was keeping this under wraps. We would find out later that most likely what that other injury was is after he would hit them in the head. he would then pull out most likely an ice pick and stick it in the side of their head and use it as a handle to drag the body outside.
So was there ice then?
Yes.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't leave the ice pick there.
No.
They're just presuming that that's
Yeah. They always knew
see-
it was an axe because he always left the axe there. But they
okay, so
never had.
it wouldn't be the fire poker because you see the fire poker sometimes has that little point on the side
It
too.
always
That's why
does.
when you said that, I went like the top is pretty thick, but the one that sticks out of a fire poker is not. So I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Since he doesn't bring stuff with him to the scene, what would make him think that it was an ice pick?
well, because later, as they work these cases and this keeps happening, it's like, all right, well, what's going on with this one little penetrating wound that everybody starts having? There's all these different ideas that people were putting forward, right? Now remember, this is before Jack the Ripper, my friends.
Wow. Do you think?
So
Okay, never mind.
when we're looking, of course, it depends on when you look at Jack the Ripper. You look at the canonical 5 victims of Jack the Ripper. You have to remember there were hundreds of murders a year there, and there were a lot more prostitutes being murdered there, but not in that manner as coined by Jack the Ripper. So they kind of culled down like 14 murders down to this canonical 5 of this is Jack the Ripper style stuff. So when I give dates, we're talking about a broad ways under there of other murders that happened that were later not attributed to Jack the Ripper. But I mean, when this happened, we didn't have this case did not get solved. The last murder that happened in this series of murders was on Christmas Eve of 1885. And nobody really knew what was going on. And that's one of those things, Mark, this is something that, well, and you too, Joe, but specifically Mark, something that when you look at assessing cases and you look at assessing dynamics and we always use that word, the totality of the circumstances. You look at what happened in Austin with the Austin Police Department up to this very day. We've had racial issues in Austin where leaders in the Black community in Austin have really been very critical on things that have happened with Austin police officers. Well, this started in 1884 or probably prior to this, even this case, because the way that the police and the way that the city council and everything looked at this is a Black issue. We don't, and they need to police their own people. They need to handle this. They did not take it very seriously at all.
So from the when you mentioned that the police were in flux and there was a city marshal, there may have been some type of state entity, there may have been a city entity along with the city marshal. So who was the agency that was responsible for the case agent of the
city marshals? The
Okay,
city marshals were handling it. Yep.
And they tied them all together?
No. What was happening at this point is it's like this is a horrible can we say that this is a horrible conversation to talk about. It's a horrible situation. So when we talk about things on this show, we're talking about reality, not made up fantasy stuff. And so the reason I say this is we have what's called today misdemeanor murders, right?
Yes.
It's like, you got a murder? You picked up a murder? Yeah. This drug dealer was talking to this other drug dealer and he shot him and that's it. And everybody's just like, nobody really cares. It's like, a drug dealer killed another drug dealer. And they don't,
and they don't. You're right. They don't.
And so, in this case, This was a misdemeanor murder as far as the police were concerned. They don't want it to happen, but they're not going to put a bunch of effort into stopping it because, I mean, it's obviously just some black man got into a fight with his black girlfriend. She hit him over the head with something and cut him pretty bad, and then he killed her. That's
So
the way.
were all
that's
the
the way they
victims
look.
black? Were all the victims black?
Until Christmas Eve. Yes. He jumps races Christmas Eve. Yeah.
So he did 4 jumps races, and then you don't hear from him again.
Nope. But there's reasons.
Or they didn't, you know, they did have other ones, but they just, who knows?
And in other places.
There could have been some others for sure that
Yeah.
weren't ever even attributed to this.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is the police looked at this. You guys know it. You've both worked homicide. You look at this, you go, okay, we have a black female, a black male. They're cohabitating. They're not married. He's got serious wounds. She's dead. Who's the main suspect?
Always the
Walter.
husband or the
Walter.
other significant other. I mean, that's where we
Yeah.
start. So it always
So
goes that way.
that is as simplistic as we can go. Now we will judge this case based on our contemporary training and experience. But back then, what did a cop know? What did a marshal know? What did the sheriff know?
You have to look at it that lens of that time, not the lens that you got today. It
Yeah,
was
so
a whole
you show up
different
at
world.
the scene. You show up to the scene. There's no abduction. There's a hell of a crime scene with blood everywhere. Horrible.
No
body,
forensics
drug
because they didn't
everywhere.
have. They had no forensics at the time.
Yeah.
Did they even
He's-
take pictures?
Yeah, he's injured. Nope, there's no pictures of any of the crime scenes here. He's
Wow.
injured and she's dead. That's a common thing that happens between lovers. I shouldn't say common, but you know, as far as murder goes, that's usually who you go to the boyfriend, you know, to the shunned lover or to the husband. So yeah.
Wow. That's a heck of
crazy.
a story. That is a crazy story. And they never caught him ever.
Well, sort of. The case gets really weird. So that was Molly Smith and Walter Spencer. The next one up that ended up being killed, so a few months later, was a woman named Eliza Shelley. She's in her bed. This is one of the things that whenever I talk to people about Jack the Ripper, is I've been to London several times. There's a guy named Russell Edwards that has spent literally, no lie, probably $800,000 on this case. No lie. He's a private individual that is a real estate investor in London. That he got the bug, right?
You got the bug, is right.
Really interested, right? And so he started looking at this stuff, and he actually has probably done more research on this than most anybody else in the world, or at least as much. I know he's spent more money doing it because he ended up purchasing Catherine Eddowes' shawl that she was wearing when she was murdered. And so Scotland Yard ended up getting rid of this stuff years and years ago, and it ended up being on some auctions. He actually ended up this thing and doing multiple DNA tests on it. And depending on who you believe, he believes that he's solved the case based on DNA. And so I've been there several times. I actually walked with Russell. Lynn and I both walked down, Whitechapel. We went to all of the locations, saw all the stuff.
Soho?
What's that?
Did you go to Soho?
Did you go to Soho?
No,
The Werewolves of London. The Werewolves of London.
I've been there. But yeah, and there are a lot of people that are like, oh man, this is horrific. And I'm thinking, wait a second. Why does everybody know about Jack the Ripper, who hung out at 2:00 in the morning in Spitalfields, Whitechapel district of London, which was a really bad area, at 2:00 in the morning with prostitutes everywhere, People paid to sleep in people's yards. People rented out their yards for people to sleep in. It would be like transients, right? So these prostitutes are up all night long and they're having sex with these men in the, 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. What's more dangerous, working in Spitalfield in Whitechapel, or just going to bed in Austin, Texas, closing your door, and getting in your nice warm bed and going to sleep? What's scarier than because you could look at the Jack the Ripper stuff and go, well, that's a dangerous job. Being a prostitute is a very dangerous job. How do people know more about that and know nothing about the midnight assassin in Austin, Texas, that happened before them, killed more people in a more heinous way?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, though. It was the racial component. It was the racial component, and more specifically, that's not going to get any traction during that period of time. And to be quite frank with you,
Civil War,
it's traction today either.
Yeah. It's post-Civil War.
Just the way society is structured.
But how many? Okay, so total murders that you can pin or attribute to them were what? 5 or
8?
6?
8.
8. So he was a little more prolific that we know of.
Yeah, 1 year.
What else? Yeah, we don't even know that. We don't even know if those were just 8 or you have more, but you're just never going to know. You have no DNA of any kind. At least in Jack the Ripper, they had some DNA that he could go and track something down. Here, you don't have a piece of clothing, a piece of anything.
No.
So
and the the interesting thing is William Burt, Dr. Burt was the city doctor at the time, and he's the one that they would in cases like this, they would take the body and take it to the dead room of the hospital. That's what they called it, the dead room. And at that time, they would put the body in the dead room, and then one of the physicians would go down there and look at it and kind of do a very cursory autopsy on, at that time, like looking and going, okay, well, what happened here? What kind of injuries, and documenting some of those injuries.
Did they document it?
Was that?
Do you have the documentation? Did you were able to get your hands on the documentation?
In a couple of them, yes. They actually explain exactly, who explains it better are the reporters from the Austin Statesman, because that's cops back then didn't write reports. That's what there was a thing called testifying in court. That's what you did. So you didn't have to write a report. You went and testified. So cops weren't writing.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't being documented anywhere, but who did document it? The newspapers did. And how did they do it? Very sensational. They put their own thing. So they're trying to sell those papers, man, just like today, making it as controversial as possible.
Are they doing that today? Yeah, I thought they were in facts. They were all about facts.
And so you're looking at this stuff, Mark, there were more Black owned businesses in 1884 in Austin, Texas, than there are today in 2025.
Oh yeah. If you read back 1800s and going all the way up to the 1930s and 1940s, absolutely. Yep.
It was very, very separate. There was very much, they were running their own businesses, their own restaurants, their own bars, their own blacksmiths, the whole thing. And it was a very, very strong community at that point, but they were completely separate from the governmental community that ruled over them at that point.
And Austin still had a, what is it? A trolley system? Or it hadn't gotten there yet. Did Austin still have the beginnings of the trolley system in 1880 something? They had a trolley.
I don't think so. I think that was right after that. Yeah, and they ended up because of these cases.
I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of that, so it was pretty curious.
A lot of the people that look into this case, one of the main reasons that we have moon towers in Austin today is because of this case. It was probably another 10 years later. I can't remember if they got the moon towers from Baltimore or Detroit, but they had these moon towers up there, and they switched over to another different type of lighting system. And Austin ended up buying those moon towers. So when you're driving around Austin, I think I don't know how many are left, but that's reminiscent of the servant girl murders.
That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool piece of history. I wonder,
So
the police department, in the growing stages, I've seen all the equipment and everything else. If you go to the Austin Police Department, you see all the old stuff that they had. It was curious, and how they did everything, because you said there was no reporting, so it was word of mouth. I mean, that's pretty tough. They hadn't arrived yet, like the London Metropolitan Police at that point. So
Yeah,
one of them
I don't know
about
if they have
police.
equipment pre 20th century though.
You're right.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, we had really, when I started, we had really, if you look at the equipment, Mark, that we started with, it was just ridiculous equipment. But you look at it back then, and the famous Kubaton, that's the size of a pencil that you're supposed to, subdue this 280-pound monster that's trying to go ahead and beat you with it. But yeah, and no radios, or the radios were, you had to jump up. I remember having to jump up in the air to get my unit in to at least grab something so I could talk to somebody. It was pretty cool.
that's the truth.
I could picture you both with that holster, that 357, and that one little strap holster.
That's it, man.
Yeah,
that's all you needed.
That and the rounds that you carried in your little pouch right there on the side of your belt.
See,
yeah,
that
we went high speed after that.
That was pre me. When I started, there were speed loaders. There was no.
Oh yeah, speed loaders was speed loaders. Oh, speed loaders were. I mean, that you're comparing a Yugo to a Ferrari when you talk about speed loaders, baby, because that was it, man. That was it.
See, but when you talk about equipment, Greg, he was the what I termed the catalog commando. He had the Soldier of Fortune catalog. He was like the Soldier of Fortune catalog guy, but he kept it under wraps. You had to catch him at the right moment to see exactly what was inside that patrol car. And then when you did, you didn't want to see it. You knew you made a mistake. You knew you made a mistake when you stuck your head in that patrol car, because you could see almost anything in that patrol car. RPG, the exploding shotgun,
the machetes, the Claymore mines. I'm telling you, it was.
I had picks and shovels, and I had everything I needed to get rid of that body. But anyway, so back to a little bit of seriousness. So you got Molly Smith up on Pecan Street, which is 6th Street in Bowie. The next one that we're talking about is Eliza Shelley. In hers, the thing that was really disturbing about her, she was a mother of 3. And it was described in the Austin Statesman as a neat cottage on the corner of San Jacinto and Cypress Streets, in the southern part of the city, the Central Railroad track being immediately in front of the house. When you go down there, I mean, obviously San Jacinto is still there. Cypress Street is now, I believe, 4th Street. So the railroad tracks that run right in front of the city center there.
Yeah, where they have the new high-speed rail system,
right?
That holds 4 people, that goes all the way to Cedar Park.
Yeah, that that's good. A little side, but the whole 4 people that they send.
Sorry. That was wrong on my part.
Right there, there is a hotel, which I won't mention here in this. If people want to know, they can look it up. But that hotel is right where Eliza Shelley was murdered. And she was killed with an axe in her sleep, just like the others, and drug out. Now, in this case, in the Molly Smith case and some of the other cases, I'm going to presume that there was other evidence going on, that people were seeing things, because they end up picking up this other evidence later. But imagine taking your boots off, walking into somebody's house, hitting them in the head with an axe. You both know how much your head bleeds. Getting back out of that house without stepping in any blood would be impossible. And so the crazy part is this was it's not like this was out in the country. While it's not as congested as it is today, there's still
Yeah.
multiple houses around, right? And once again, axe to the head, drags the body out into the yard, violates her out in the yard, and leaves. And we know this to be true because of the way that they were described in the Austin Statesman of ravaging her body. And when there's someone who is dead and you do that, once you're done, that body stays in that position unless that person repositions the body. So there was that idea that maybe he was positioning the body for shock effect, but that was not the case. He was just done with what he was doing. He got up, he's put his boots on, and he left. Eliza Shelley, that was May 7th, 1885. So when Molly Smith and Walter Spencer were attacked, that was December 30th, 1884. So he actually waited a little while, right? Five months, which is interesting because when you look at serial killers and you look at any of the stuff that the FBI has put out, a lot of times when that happens, you will have a long period between the first and second. And then that period keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter as they go along in the stereotypical serial killer vein. And that's kind of what happened here.
Were they able to come up with some suspects at all?
Everybody was a suspect. They arrested over 200 black men.
Oh,
yeah. And would take them to the calaboose and tune them up at the calaboose and try to pressure them into confessing. Walter Spencer was one of the ones that said they beat him, try to get him to confess, and he didn't. So yeah, that was a multiple thing. It was one thing led to another. Anybody who wanted to get anybody else in trouble, it was probably him. They'd go over there, arrest
them, beat their ass, and then wow.
Yep. Take him to
but,
the
different time, different place,
And that's the thing is during this whole thing, law enforcement is looking completely inept, right? This keeps happening and keeps
because
happening.
They were.
Hey, baby. We weren't going to be mean to the cops. No, you're absolutely right. They were completely inept. They didn't know anything other than.
You know what? To give them credit, I mean, on being inept, but it was in the infancy stages. I mean, these guys, what did they do to become a cop? Hey, Mark, here's a gun, here's a badge, and go out there and do something. They get the biggest, baddest guy, and this is the guy that's good, the Neanderthal that's going to walk over. I mean, that was your cop, and then just like really, no training, zero, nothing. I mean, that was about it. Or they call the Rangers in, and the Rangers just go over there and kill somebody and just drag them over the deal and do their thing. Back in the day, it was one right, one Ranger. That was just a different time all the way around. I mean, we really can't look at the scope that we're looking at it today because it was just crazy. Probably, if we stepped into the past, we would be like in shock.
From May 7th to May 23rd. Nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, Irene Cross. In this case, this is right by Schultz's Beer Garden. It's right across the street from the side of Schultz's Beer Garden. So if you're looking at the front door of Schultz's Beer Garden, on the left-hand side, the comptroller's office is right there. The parking lot, that's where that house was, sitting in the parking lot of the comptroller's office.
Paranormal, buddy. Paranormal. I'm telling you, those people are running around the city late at night. You probably see them. You'll see her like the Llorona coming out. I'm telling you.
Oh, there's a bunch.
I don't put it past those spirits coming back, man. Mark, the Llorona's out there, baby. You have to be careful.
You're talking to the wrong guy. Stick with the guy with the white shirt.
Irene Cross was attacked in her bed, but this time she was attacked with a knife. So she had knife wounds and almost cut her head off. but also the penetrating head wound.
God,
Right, same thing out of there. August 30th. Mary Ramey. Mary was 11 years old. Vince Young Steakhouse.
Yes, I know
Okay.
exactly where it's at, across from the Hampton.
That's
4th
where
Street,
this.
right? Yeah.
Yep, that's where this happened. It was 300 East Cedar Street at that point. Valentine O'Weed's house, and Mary was the daughter of Rebecca Ramey. Rebecca was about 50. And her and Mary were working at the Weeds house, and they would sleep in the kitchen. So they would get all their everything done with the house and everything, and then they would have dinner, get everything wrapped up, clean everything up, and then turn the kitchen into their bedroom, and they slept on the floor on some mats on the floor. We don't know really too much about what happened here. This actually, Joe, all BS aside, this actually does turn into a ghost story for Rebecca and Mary Ramey. And so Rebecca and Mary are there. He comes in, takes his boots off. Actually, he gets the axe, takes his boots off, comes in the house, hits Rebecca over the head, thinks he kills her, hits Mary, little 11-year-old Mary, over the head, drags her out into the yard, and violates her in the yard, and then puts his boots back on and leaves. Rebecca actually survived. I know exactly where her grave is. And there's different stories about Rebecca, but Rebecca is an actual, I tied this in with a legend of a ghost story over at the state hospital, because Rebecca had really bad head injury. So where would they have sent her to?
Oh, yeah.
State hospital.
Right.
Yeah, she was done.
So
Was she able to see anything?
And she woke up every morning. Where's my daughter? And she would get up and she would walk all the way into Austin. And people would see her and have to tell her everything that happened and get her back on a wagon and take her back out to the asylum, the sanatorium, the Austin State Lunatic Asylum at that point, and put her back. She lost all long-term memory. So every morning, every day she woke up, she would have to live through this thing again. And there is a early 1900s up until the 1980s story about this ghost that walks along Guadalupe Street, which you guys probably don't know this. It used to be called Asylum Road. That's actually on the maps.
I
Yeah.
never heard that before.
I know.
Never heard that.
Well, that's the road that led to the Austin Lunatic Asylum.
Yeah.
Austin
And
State
so
Hospital.
Yeah. And so,
Wow.
so that is an actual legend ghost story here in Austin that myself and maybe a handful of other people might have picked up on. That if there's such thing as ghosts, maybe this is just a memory, a collective community memory of people talking about this woman that nobody knew who she was, and she looked lost and confused walking down the road, and it just kind of turned into a ghost story. But that's where that comes from. So Mary Ramey was buried along with the rest of them over in Oakwood Cemetery there in Austin. The next ones, we went from August, what did I say? August 30th to September 28th. Orange, Washington, a 25-year-old man was killed in his sleep, and Gracie Vance, his 20-year-old girlfriend, also struck in the head while sleeping, carried into the backyard, murdered, and died there. So Orange, Washington, and Gracie Vance was her name. There was two other friends that were staying at the house as well, Lucinda Body and Patty Gibson. They were 17, and they were also attacked and severely wounded, but nobody could provide any description.
That's wild. That's wild.
Of who this person was. Now, there was a little boy I can't remember if it was Irene Cross or whether it was Eliza Shelley. One of their kids woke up and said that the attacker was a black man wearing a dress. Depending on your line of thinking, at this point, Austin was a cow town, and at night there were guys running around shooting their guns, and there were groups of ne'er-do-wells, groups of cowboys that would get drunk and then just run through town and shoot at houses, shoot at horses, break things, attack people. And so the police are sitting back, just lumping all of this in with the regular debauchery that was going on in Austin, just going, you know what? This is just regular stuff. This is just big groups of people that are coming in here, getting drunk and harassing people, when it wasn't the case at all. So we get to after Orange, Washington and Gracie Vance are murdered. We get to December 28th of 1885. And you look at all of the violence that had happened. One of the second to last people that were attacked died on December 28th, 1885. When she was actually attacked was December 24th, 1885. I mean, Christmas Eve, there's a lot of parties going on. And this happens in a kind of a weird way. And I have more to this story that I will share with you guys. I'm not going to say it on the podcast. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, you can read the book, sucker. But there's very much more to this that's very interesting. There was a lady named Susan Hancock, and Moses Hancock is her husband. They had two daughters. One of the daughters, 15 years old, and she ended up going to a party that night. Whether mom was just keeping track of the daughter or whether mom just was kind of tired of dad, Moses Hancock was a hard drinker. So there's a good chance that Susan Hancock maybe would sleep in other rooms and not sleep in rooms with him. She was asleep in her 15-year-old daughter's bed. When Moses is awakened by some sort of loud noises. And he runs out and their window is broken. There's blood on the bed. He looks outside. He runs outside. His wife is laying there, the serious head wound, and somebody's running away. And he says, you killed my wife, you son of a bitch. Something to that effect. Some neighbors heard this. And this person runs off. Well, he gets help from his neighbors. The neighbors come over there. And within probably 30 minutes, there's probably 200 people in his yard. And they pick her up with her brains exposed, bring her back into the house and try to nurse her. And she's in a horrible condition, lives a couple more days and dies. But that whole case is very interesting. One, Susan Hancock is a white woman. This is the first white woman that has been attacked. First time it's happened. This and something that happens a few minutes later just stirs up white people in Austin like crazy. But Susan is laying there. One of the marshals that is on scene is standing around, and you can imagine your crime scene is done, right?
Yeah,
200 people,
200
people on horseback.
Might as well get cattle and run it through there.
Exactly. And it's Christmas Eve. So everybody is, or it's Christmas Eve. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Christmas Eve. Drunk, right? People coming back from parties and all this stuff. And oh, by the way, this is Four Seasons on Cesar Chavez Street, which was called Water Street at the time, right there on the river. So that's their house was in the parking lot of the Four Seasons. As all this chaos is going on, a 15-year-old boy walks up to the cop, the marshal, and hands him, says, I found this bloody axe over there in the alley behind the house. The cop takes the axe. Got the murder weapon. Look, I got the murder weapon. That's all that's said.
Yeah,
That's
no.
all that's done.
Yeah, that was it.
That's all that's done on that. They don't do any more investigating on that. They don't question anybody else on that. Do y'all get my point? That's all that's
Yes. But once again, I mean, there's witnesses to this. What and no suspect description.
so Moses is the only witness to the guy running away, right? And he's drunk. So all he sees is a shadow. He sees the back end of somebody running off, and he hollers at him.
Does she have
While
a
all
poke
this
in,
is
her, in the side? have
while
a
all
little
this is
poke?
going on, no, sure didn't. While all this is going on, somebody hollers up the street. You know where the parking garage is for the Travis County HR building, the big HR building there?
At
700
300
Lavaca?
Lavaca? 700
Right there
Lavaca? Yeah.
700 Lavaca, right there. That's where our next occurs while this crime scene is going on. So a person comes across a body laying in the alley right there. Her name is Eula Phillips. She's a 17-year-old married woman with a child, dead, ravaged just the way the other ones with the penetrating wound.
But the white girl didn't have the penetrating one. Or they didn't describe it.
Eula is white also.
Ah.
Eula is 17. Do a little bit of research on Eula. For those of you who don't know, the legislative branch of the Texas government at that time was the number one supporter of a place called Guystown, the red light district in Austin. Eula Phillips was entertaining multiple legislators at 17. And she had just come from what's called an assignation house within an hour. That assignation house was run by a lady named May Tobin, who was a black woman. This white girl was at a black brothel with one of her gentlemen from the legislature, and they were turned away because there wasn't any rooms. So he got a hack, a taxi cab, horse cab, and they left out of there. He left out of the taxi cab somewhere else, dropped her off at her house. She went inside where her husband was attacked with an axe. She was attacked with an axe, and her baby boy was given an apple. The parents of her husband came in when they heard this, blood everywhere. Their son, James Phillips, is laying there with a critical wound to his head, and the little boy is sitting on the bed in the blood with an apple in his hand. Just things you find out at crime scenes, right?
Man, that couldn't be any more like ordinary times. As freaky as that is,
Yeah.
Man, that'd be a great movie. I mean, this is just
It
crazy.
sure would.
It's just
it's
this
getting
movie
better.
Crazy.
It gets better
Hannibal
from here.
Lecter.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please, by all
Gets
means.
better from here.
You
Well,
got
the
piqued
problem
my
with that
interest.
is we're running out of time. See how that
Yeah.
works, folks? It's 56 minutes past the hour. So
Wow,
That
time
was good.
flew
That was
by.
good too, man. Man.
what we'll do is we can revisit this sometime, but it's just something to let you cogitate. And those that are fantastic listeners out there, if you want to call me on what happened and what the dates were and all that stuff, please write it in the comments below. This was a horrible, horrible situation in 1884 to 1886 in Austin. I can give you one thing. A guy named Nathan Elgin, black man that worked at a restaurant, was a bartender, would have carried a knife, would have carried a ice pick with him for sure as part of his apron and everything else that he wore. And the interesting thing is, out of Eula Phillips, there was a footprint, and that footprint looked weird. Malcolm Hornsby, the sheriff, cut the boards out of that house and preserved those footprints, which went to a guy named Nathan Elgin, who had a club foot. Nathan gets shot by a city police officer, Marshall, just a couple of months later. And all of this stopped. No more servant girl murders, nothing. We just know that
Wow.
Nathan's dead,
Or he moved to London.
or he moved to London. And that's the second part of the Servant Girl Annihilator 3 Gorillas podcast. Thanks
Baby,
for
that's
entertaining me on this, guys. I know that
Beautiful, baby.
Spellbinding, Gregory. Spellbinding.
Well, you spellbind me, man.
well, wait,
This is a movie, man. This is a movie.
it gets better. Y'all got anything before we go?
No, sir.
I wouldn't defile that story with anything lesser
No.
of that. That
Hey,
was
No, you're right, Mark.
Like you always
Silly.
say, this is Mark's go-to. Greg, don't ever do too much. Always leave them wanting more.
That's
Too
exactly
much Greg
right.
is too much Greg.
That's exactly right. And never see it,
Good
and
question.
never let him see you sweat, Greg. Never.
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 Let him see
Love you.
sweat.
See you next week.
Later, guys.
Three Gorillas Podcast is a zombie advocacy production.